In this knife talk video, we're looking at the Benchmade 761 titanium MonoLock. And this is a really nicely designed knife overall. And that's the first thing that I noticed about it when I first saw it when it was being released. It has a really classic look to it. So a pretty simple handle shape here with some nice 3D machining. You can see it's chamfered all around the edges. Both sides, has 3D machining on the lock bar, has some jimping machined into the lock bar, and just a nice looking handle with all of the shape and the machining that go into it. And it makes for an ergonomic, a good feeling handle too. You can grab it, and because it's simple, there's not too many ridges where your fingers are going. It just feels like it fits in your hand really well. Along with that, you see that it only has a tip down right hand carry clip. And for some people that's a problem. Some people really only like to have tip up carry. I carry some knives tip down. I carry my zero tolerance 0561 tip down. And the reason for that is the same reason why I'm okay with carrying, or with this knife only having a right hand tip down carry clip. And it's because I think that on some knives it just makes it a lot more ergonomic. It makes it feel better in the hand. When you grip the knife, there's kind of a natural area right there where there's space. And on the 561, the ZTO 561, it's almost necessary. I really don't like how the clip makes the handle feel when it's set for tip up carry on that knife. And although obviously I haven't seen what it would be like on this knife, I think that it would be a lot less ergonomic because the tip is the clip is relatively thick. It's kind of sticks up a little bit. It's relatively wide, so I think it would be kind of in the way if it was down here, and it isn't in the way up here. So it makes it more ergonomic, makes it so that the clip's not gonna bother your hand while you're using it and stuff. Moving on to the blade, you can see that it has a very classic looking drop point blade shape. So, it would definitely be useful for really any kind of normal cutting, really anything that you would need it for, camping, food prep, opening boxes, it's going to work. This drop point blade style is really, I think as useful as it gets for most things, for like a general use blade shape. And it's nicely done with a really nice, plunge grind here and then a swedge on the top. Now this blade is M390, so it's a really good steel. We'll talk about that later also, but you can see that this one was a first production, and talk about that a little later also. But so it's an overall really nice design. And then I think that what they were going for with this is kind of a competitor to the Chris Reeve Sebenza. So it's in the same price range. This knife new from dealers is $340, and that's right around where a lot of Sebenzas are. So you could get, if not a used Sebenza for the same price as you can get this new. But why would you get this instead? Well, there are some, upgrades between the Sebenza to this. So first of all, like I was saying, this has M390 steel versus, the Sebenza has the CPM S35VN. And M390 is kind of like the best jack of all trades as steels go. It doesn't get the hardest, it doesn't hold the best edge, it's not the toughest, and it's not the most stainless, but it kind of takes all of those things at once to the highest level, or around the highest level that can be done, bringing them all up to that level. So it's a very good kind of general steel, relatively easy to sharpen for how well it holds an edge, and it does hold an edge really well. And it doesn't chip too much, all that stuff. So it's a really, really good overall steel, which makes it a really nice steel because it doesn't lean so far in one direction. So a really nice steel, and definitely I think pretty much everybody would say a better steel than S35VN, but S35VN is a good steel also. Then another thing here is that the pivot on this knife, rather than a stepped pivot, or I forget what Chris Reeve calls that kind of pivot exactly, but basically it's like a bushing pivot, so that you can tighten the handles down as much as you need to, and it's not going to make the action too tight. This knife has, I believe, a step pivot and also ball bearings. So because of that, it's very, very smooth. You can see that it drops closed, super smooth to open, just really nice kind of high quality feeling action. So, you know, again, just to show you, it drops closed pretty much every time, as long as you're not holding it like this while you're unlocking it. It's going to drop closed, and it's going to be really smooth on opening. So a really nice action because of that stepped ball bearing pivot. And again, I'm not 100% sure that it is stepped, but it's definitely ball bearings. And then another thing that this knife has, it is a titanium frame lock. Both sides of the handles are titanium, like I said, like the Sebenza. But this knife has an interesting lock face. So most frame locks don't have this little kind of prong sticking up here. And so what that does is it allows the lock bar to move across the lock face as it wears. So, you know, both the lock face somewhat and the lock bar, mostly the lock bar because it's titanium, which is softer, are going to wear, you know, as you open and use the knife. And on a normal frame lock, as that happens, the lock will move farther across the face of the tang. And so as it does that, it pushes the blade back a little more so that it stays tight against the stop pin and, you know, doesn't have any blade play. But at some point it gets the whole way across, or as far as it's going to go across, and it can get blade play. That doesn't happen all the time. I mean, it takes a lot of wear and use. I've had it happen on some frame locks. But what this knife from Benchmade has is it has this prong that stops it. So it's basically an over travel stop in this direction, right? And this knife also has an over travel stop in the other direction, which a lot of knives have now. But this is pretty unique, and it keeps it from traveling too much. So it's not going to wear. The lock bar is not going to wear, you know, too much. So, you know, the problem with that is if the lock bar doesn't move across the face of the lock, then it can develop front to back, so, you know, this way, blade play as it wears, right? So the lock face is going to wear a little bit, and that can give it a little bit of blade play. So what they added here is a stop pin. So you can see there's kind of two. There's just a spacer, and then this is the actual stop pin that the blade hits. This can be rotated. So what that does is the different faces are different, you know, distances from the center of the pin. So if you rotate it, it can, you know, take away that blade play. And I'll talk about, I actually sent this to Benchmade for them to work on a little bit recently, and that was one of the things they fixed, and it definitely works, you know. So it's a nice addition. It's a kind of unique style of lock, an addition to the classic frame lock that you see on a lot of knives, that makes this, you know, very adjustable, which not a lot of frame locks are. So some updates over the Sebenza. You could also say that the amount of machining on the handle is a kind of upgrade, and the clip also, unless you don't like the tip down carry. But I think, you know, a really nice knife with lots of different you know, improvements on it, and even if you're not comparing it to the Sebenza, it's just a really nice knife. Great steel, nice solid titanium handles, very ergonomic, very utilitarian blade shape, really well made, nice action. As you can see, again, opens and closes really easily. You can definitely flick it, you know, no problem there. Easy to flick open and closed. I don't think Benchmade has any problem with you doing that, whereas, you know, Chris Reeve suggests against flipping, you know, the Sebenzas open. So that's, you know, if you like to flick your knives open and closed while you're sitting on the couch or whatever, or if you just need to get it out really quickly and you don't want to, you know, slowly and carefully do that, you want to be able to, you know, just flip it open, then that's an upgrade also. But a really nicely made knife, a really nice knife with lots of good materials and everything. And kind of to move on, I recently sent this into Benchmade because it did have a little bit of blade play front to back, and also it had a pretty light detent. And that was actually something that I think, you know, there were relatively a few, you know, enough that it seemed like, you know, there might have been a little bit of an issue with the first production knives having light detents. So I sent it in, and it came back definitely with a stronger detent. So you can see, you know, if you shake it, it's not going to come out, which before it would just fall out if you shook it like this. So it's nice that it doesn't now. they definitely fixed it, and that goes along with, there's lots of reports of Benchmade having great service, great warranty, and that's the case. I've used their warranty before, and it seems really nice. They also took the blade play out, so just overall a really nicely made knife, and because it's backed by Benchmade's warranty, you don't feel too bad about spending a lot of money on it. And it's something that you're going to be able to use for a long time because it is adjustable. So a really nice knife, and one that I'm happy to have gotten to check out and everything. And if you can find one for a good price, don't be afraid to get one. So if you've watched this far, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Go ahead and like if you have, and if you have any comments or questions, don't be afraid to leave them below. I'm happy to see what you guys have to say. And keep an eye out for other videos. I've got lots of 1-minute overviews and knife talk videos coming up. So subscribe to my channel so that you can get notifications for those. And don't forget to go out and do good.